that's perfect.
I'm supposed to be. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Valerie, for joining the author's table. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Looking
Yes.
forward to it.
Well, thank you, Valerie. What, from a writer's point of view, describe yourself.
Oh boy, a late bloomer from a writer's point of view. I used to write like academic type things, but I didn't delve into novels and fiction and stuff till I don't know much later. Let me just put it that
I know.
way.
I know you're an individual who wears many hats.
That's you got it.
That's probably
Too
an
many.
understatement.
Too many. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
So now, can you talk about what inspired you to start writing, Valerie?
Uh, well, I think I'm a teacher at heart. And when we write, they say there's two reasons why people write: to educate or to entertain. So if you can bring both of those together
That's
in one
right.
manuscript, you got it going. But really, my work is contemporary, and it
Hmm.
dwells sort of on sociological, I guess, societal
Okay.
issues that people face. That's kind of the background noise, as they say.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm thinking mine up. I think of them as educational. People read them and enjoy them, thank goodness.
That's right.
And so they were entertained. Hopefully, they'll also get that other message. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Now, as an author of fiction, nonfiction, short stories, and
Mm.
children's books, now what do you find the most rewarding?
I think the
Okay.
short stories I enjoy, they're much, first of all, we live in sort of a McQuick society. I want it all my way
That's
10
right.
minutes ago. And
That's
so
right.
people don't want to read through three or 400 pages, even on an audio book, you know. So the short stories have become very popular. I have a big following, thank goodness, for my short stories. One, because they are short. So
Right.
when you're sitting in that car loop waiting for your kid to get out of school, or you're on the soccer field waiting for the game to finish, or you're in the dentist's office, you know, the horrible waiting room or eternities. It's a quick read, 7, 10 pages, and you get the whole story. And people like that.
Short and
But
sweet.
yeah, and I like it because when you are writing a novel, you can sometimes, what I call, start wandering in the weeds. So you have a plot and a subplot and 5 or 6 characters, and you, at least for me, I start to make a spreadsheet so I can keep track of who's related to who. And, did I already tell them this guy's a pharmacist? Wait a minute, let me look back. Whereas in a short story, it's a
Yeah.
direct line plot, I call it. You usually have maybe 3 people, maybe, and they're confined in a space. They're not traveling. They're either in their kitchen, they're in their office, they're in an elevator, an airplane, but it's pretty much succinct where they are. And that makes it so much easier to write because you can really work on the dialogue, which brings it alive.
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I like that. But it's interesting, and I guess most writers have had this experience. You begin to write with an idea in mind, and as you're writing, it's like all of a sudden the characters are somehow they're taking over. Wait a minute, what
They're
happened?
they're coming
I
to
wrote,
life.
yeah, I wasn't heading in that direction. What happened here? So I enjoy it.
Oh,
Yes,
awesome.
I like
Now,
it.
now, now, who is your favorite author and why?
Mm, well, I follow John Grisham.
No,
I've
yes.
read almost all of his work, his legal thrillers. And there's a difference between uh, a thriller and a mystery. So a mystery is a who done it, whereas a thriller is why did they do it?
Oh,
That's the question.
that's true.
Why is this happening? So that's where my novels are categorized. They're psychological thrillers because we know what's happened and who did what, and we're trying to figure out why. So I like John Grisham because he's very detailed, and he writes, of course, they're legal, which can be
Oh,
very
yes.
verbose,
Yes,
getting very
absolutely.
complicated. If you ever try to read an insurance policy or a legal brief, no. So, but he writes it in a way that the reader can understand,
Hmm.
and that you can follow the ins and outs and the trackings of all the legal maneuvering and all the lawyering games that go on. And he's very blunt. He himself, of course, was an attorney and then he was a judge. Yeah.
And
So,
he paints a good picture when you're reading it. And
yes, yes, yes. So he's also for that reason a good model to follow if you're a writer. I mean, find an author you like. Judy Pico is another one I think writes well. Judy,
okay.
I think it's Jodi Pico, and she writes as I do with my novels. They call it the family drama or the family saga,
Yes,
where it all involves, and all of my short stories involve family relationships
yes.
as well.
Now, Valerie, you have written 42 short stories and
Oh, more than
16 books. Okay, quite. I know you quite a few.
that. More than that. I'm probably close to 100 now. What I do with my short stories, you learn from other people.
Hmm.
So I was writing my short stories randomly when I would be inspired. And then the chicken soup with rice books, and then they have the chicken soup for the soccer mom and the
Oh, yes,
chicken soup for the dog owner and all that. And I thought, wait a minute, I have enough short stories I can write on a theme. So when I did that, see, at first, I'll just show you. At first, I was just putting them together, and this would be volume one, volume two, volume three, volume four. Okay, but then, and this is perfect for this weekend, by the way.
that's
So
right.
then I wound up having a lot about mothers and stepmothers and grandmothers and that. And I thought I could bring those together. And I did. It's called A Gift from Mom.
That's right.
Perfect for this weekend
That's
for
right.
anyone who hasn't done it yet.
That's
And
right.
then I had a lot about love. So I brought those together, and it doesn't it says stories for your Valentine. So of course in February this is a big seller, but it doesn't have to be because you could have your Valentine all year.
That's
So
right.
I started to bring them together, in that way. And I have one about men, short stories for the man in your life. So I thought if the chicken soup people could do this, I guess I can do
Yeah, why
it.
not Valerie, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about your book called Amazing Grace.
Oh, Amazing Grace. Well, interesting is Amazing Grace.
Hmm.
And all of my novels, like this one's The Prodigal Son, and I have another one, Suffer the Little Children. So you kind of get a theme going there.
Yes.
This one is Sins of the Father. However, people often will email me and say, "Are you a Christian writer? Do you write, faith based?" I don't. I just try to find, again, one of the things you learn as a writer is to have a catchy title of some kind. So I thought, what could be catchier than words from the Bible, sort of biblical, even if it's
Yes.
not directly from the Bible?
Right.
But I made sure they fit my story. So, Amazing Grace, all of my novels have a child in peril. And it's a series where I have a psychologist and a grumpy detective, a nice psychologist and a grumpy detective working together through the juvenile system.
Hmm.
So when a child is in peril, you have to look at the family and then three agencies: their school, their mental health, and the legal system is what you're dealing with. So in each of my novels, I deal with each of those systems. And this child in peril, and the kid, I've some are teenagers, one's a baby. So this one starts off with this teenager, she's like 14, and she's in her art class at school. And she tries to commit suicide. She took her Exacto, the art knife in the class, Exacto knife, and she cuts her wrist. And then she starts cutting herself. So it's kind of gruesome. But and the students are running wild saying she could attack us, and the usual. So anyway, but the question there is, why does this girl, she's only 14, why does she think, why would she choose to think death is better than life, and she's only 14 years old?
Hmm.
So that's where you say, why? How did this happen? What happened to this kid or her life? Yeah. And as you read, you find out, and her father is among the missing, and the mother is kind of not reality based. So, anyway, those are just the hints. I can't give away any more
Okay.
than that. You got to read the book.
That's right. Now this one I like. It's called Write, Publish, Sell,
Oh, my
and
best selling book. Let
and
me
this
give
is
that
yeah,
up to the screen.
yeah, and that's a step by step guide, I believe, right,
Yes.
Valerie? Yep.
Yeah. It focuses more on marketing, because that seems to be the most difficult thing for other than writing a book.
Right.
It's like, now what do I do? I don't know. They think the good fairy's going to come along and just make it popular or something. And most or many writers are kind of not loners, but they're not looking for publicity and all that sort of thing. It's not their style. They're more pensive and internally driven, and that's why they're writing. It's one of the reasons they're writing. So I talk a lot about, in fact, I have a whole seminar I give called Mega Marketing with Mini Money. And
There you
it's all
go.
kind of free ways to get publicity, which is different than advertising. Advertising is paid for, publicity is prayed for. It's what I tell people.
Nicely said. I like that.
Yes, yes. I also tell them people do business with people they know. So the more people you know, the more likely you are to have book sales. So I have all these little catchphrases. You must tell to sell. That's what I tell them. Tell to sell.
You're
But they say,
hired,
well,
Valerie.
they just feel like, oh, I'd be bragging and I this. I said, but if you were a dentist, would you be? If someone said, "What do you do?" Would you be embarrassed? Say, "Well, I'm a dentist,"
Right.
or an
Yeah.
accountant. So why can't you say I'm an author?
That's
So
correct.
I don't know. It's like a mental block or something.
It's like,
Yeah.
any author, when you create something, you create a brand then.
Yes, well, that's sometimes true. Now, since I do cross, if you just stick, as Stephen King, for example, he just sticks with those horror books, and he's an excellent writer.
Oh,
But
yes.
I don't enjoy his writing because you finish the book and now you're looking over your shoulder for the people that coming to get you. He's suspicious of even a car. Now you're suspicious of a car.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
one of yeah. So but if you stay, or like John Grisham, he
Hmm.
stays within his realm. If you go out of your realm, like I write novels and I write short stories and then I write nonfiction, and so then it's almost like you have to build your brand in each one of those. Yeah,
Absolutely. And it's, as an author too, when you create a book, it just doesn't end there.
that's so true.
Because that seems like that's just the beginning of your
It is.
adventure.
Yes. Yeah, but I encourage people, if you go again, if you're in any kind of professional field, they have a conference or workshops or something, because usually you have to get continuing education units if you have any kind of license, and so you have to
That's
mix
right.
and mingle with people of your type. And so I encourage them, by every chance you have, if there's going to be an author at a library or a cafe or wherever they're going to
Abs-
be, go and if you can just get just one idea, it will add to your own success.
Absolutely right. If you
Yeah.
if you want to succeed, you have to go beyond just writing the book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I tell people, you'll write that book, but if you don't market it, it'll still be in the plastic wrappers in a box under your bed. And when you meet your maker, your relatives are going to come and say, "What's all this stuff under the bed in these boxes?" And off it goes to the Goodwill, which is okay. Nothing wrong with the Goodwill. People may get it off the shelf there. But how much better to have fame in your lifetime, not
that's
to mention royalties.
yes, that's absolutely
Like
well said.
Buffalo.
now,
Yes.
now this book is for the younger reader, called The Sun and the Moon.
Oh,
Now, what
yes.
makes this book so special, Valerie?
Well, that was one.
Yes. Yep.
It's actually a beginning, I guess you'd say, science book for like the preschool kids, because what I'm doing is as I said, I was a teacher. I've taught at every grade level and up to graduate students in universities, but I've taught children, young children. In science, they're always sort of hesitant. It's like the scary, that math.
Yeah.
Ugh. But anyway, this book then compares what like activities we do in the day, and we have the sun in the day, and the sun gives us warmth, and the sun is yellow because they usually learn colors at that age. And then I compare it to here's nighttime, it's dark, and there's stars that light up that we don't see in the day, and that sort of thing. So the children begin, hopefully, I don't think they're going to be astrophysicists. I don't think there's any competition for Dr. Neil Dawson, but, but it's a beginning, and there aren't too many books sort of in a scientific area for that young of a child. But if you can pique their interest,
That's right.
why not?
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
right. Absolutely.
Children that read. Here's another one of my little children who read succeed. And children who read turn into adults who think. So there you go.
Words
I'm
of
just
wisdom.
horrible. Yeah. Well, all these workshops and seminars, I can't claim it. I get to pick them up here and there.
But it definitely does help.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's well, like you said though, these workshops are for to expand your horizons,
Yes.
and to network and to grow with others and
Mhm.
to take that information wherever you want to do.
Sure.
Yep,
Well, and you build your brand
that's
and you
correct.
build your following. Even when we had this planned and I sent it out, I've got many, many, many emails. People said, I'm tuning in and where's the link and on and on. So I felt like,
That's
whoa. I
that's
said,
right.
one woman said to me, I knew you when you were nobody and now you're somebody. I don't know, can I still talk to you?
Everybody is a somebody, right?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
right.
and I also encourage writers. I said, Stephen King didn't, when he was born, he was a babe in arms. Was he a best-selling millionaire writer, or even Patterson, who
Yes,
James Patterson? I don't read his stuff, but he's and Rowling. And I've never read anything about Harry and his friends, but she writes under a pen name Galbraith. I think it's Robert Galbraith, I think. And those are pretty good. They're like detective
sure,
novels.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, look at Nora Roberts.
Oh, yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, you think about. I mean, it's like book after book after book. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just nonstop.
But it does get easier. My very first novel was what? Suffer the Little Children. That's this one. I've actually had over the years changed the cover, but it took me years to write this book. First, I really was not a creative writer. I have degrees, but not in journalism, not in creative writing, not in as an English teacher. And my writing experience to that time had always been sort of academic, that sort
Yes,
of thing, writing for coursework. So this was a real challenge, and I must have read more than 40 or 50 books on writing just to educate myself. I thought that's less expensive than going back and getting a whole other
that's
college degree. I could just go get these books. And every one I was enlightened because it was a whole different path for me.
absolutely
So it
yes.
took me years to write that book and get it right. And another thing, again, I encourage writers like every 2 years, I go back to my manuscripts and, spiff them up a little bit, edit a few things. I say, how did I write that? Why did I? That
it,
sounds terrible.
it's excuse me. It's funny. Like over time, though, when you first write something, or really anything, and you come back to it,
Yeah.
it's like, what was I thinking? Or why did I do this? And yeah,
Yeah.
it's. I think
Right.
that's just nature. As
Yeah.
time goes on, you look back at something. It's like, or it could be anything,
Right.
and it just
Yeah.
changes.
Exactly. And even and people that I wrote this book and this, I said, wait a minute. What if you played the piano? Do you think that first time you did Mary Had a Little Lamb or
That's
something
right.
that it worked out? You
Chopsticks.
know? Yeah, that's right. That's right. That was a good one, Chop. That's about as far as I got with the piano thing. So, but yeah, I mean, anything, baseball players, dentists,
That's right.
practice, practice,
That's
practice.
right. Now these two books are chapter books. Now they're grades 2 through 6. Now, the
Oh my
first one,
goodness.
can you explain your viewers what are chapter books?
Oh, okay. Well, chapter book in children's literature, you start off with picture books. Lots
Yes.
of big pictures, very few words. Then they go up to easy reader, they're called. So now about half the page is text and half is an illustration,
Mm-hmm.
and their vocabulary is expanding. They use there's something called the Dolch list that they use in school, well, nationwide, and that gives you your basic like 200 words, and you use that. And then you get to chapter books, and chapter books sort of they're about 100, maybe 120 pages, of few, if any, illustrations other than the cover. Although some people put a little illustration at the beginning of each chapter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they'll
Yes.
put a flower or a fireman's hat or whatever the book is about. Um, and the kids like it because oh, they feel so. This is like a real book now. I'm not reading that baby stuff about ducks and monkeys and
There,
talking
yeah.
animals.
Yes.
These are people. People are having dialogue usually in a chapter book.
It's the
And
growth process.
yes, it's exactly right. And they feel
Mm-hmm.
like, ooh, and yet it's not overwhelming. I mean,
That's
it's not.
correct. Yeah.
Although Harry Potter, the Harry Potter books are what, 600 pages, and when those books came out, which is years ago, and my some of my many children were young still, and, and they with this Harry Potter, I'm thinking you can't. It's difficult to get a kid to read a chapter book, which is only
Yes.
120 pages, and it's in standard North American English. Now we're trying to get kids to read these British English, and
Yes.
they're 500 pages, and they're all wizardry, and she makes up creative words about things, and because it's I don't know magic and that there's a whole coalition of
Oh,
groups of people
absolutely.
that protested. What do you? So I thought, oh, this doesn't stand a prayer. Well,
Surprise.
now there's a whole section at
Yeah.
Disney World
Oh,
that's just
yes.
Harry
Now,
Potter.
now, also, I think Lion, Witch, and a Wardrobe is that way
Oh
too.
yeah.
And that was always one of my favorites too.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, that was beyond my time. I did Nancy Drew, and the Hardy Boys. Those were series books,
Oh, yeah.
which was interesting because the Nancy Drew books carry the name Carolyn Keene, but that was a made-up name. And each of those books were written by a different person who worked for this publishing company. But they did okay.
Oh,
Obviously, kids are still reading them today, and they modernized them. No
what?
more about the dial-up, ring-up
Yes.
telephone.
Imagine having that today, right?
Oh boy. Yeah, being an antique or being the Smithsonian.
Oh,
I
boy.
could
So,
find a place.
yep. Now, these two chapter books have a wonderful meaning. The first one is called Summer School and Smarties.
Oh yeah,
And,
summer school for smarties.
and then you have a second one that's a bad hair, good hat, and new friends.
Exactly.
Eh,
And again, this is the same little girl. So the covers of this little girl, first of all, she loves purple, but you see she has eyeglasses on in both.
yes.
So I keep my character. That's important. You have to have a certain character. If the person, I don't know, is left-handed, make sure they're left-handed through your whole book. You
That's
know,
true.
it's things like that that authors often miss, or they get out to jump in their Ford, and then when they get out there, it's a Plymouth or something. No, keep things
It's like
straight.
what chapter did I miss?
Exactly. Or if their mother's name was Eleanor, don't refer to her as Hazel three
that's
chapters
that's
later.
that's right.
So it's those little details get the readers really mixed up. But back to these summer school for smarties. I certainly didn't want to put summer school for dummies because
That's
they have those dummy books, and I thought I don't want
no.
no
That'll
trying
be
to
a wrong
encourage
message.
trying to encourage these children. And so a lot of kids are faced with summer school because they didn't quite make it. And there is still even a lot of shame. People hang their head, well, I got left back in third grade. And I'm thinking, you're 50. Why is this still bothering you? You're successful now.
there, there might be other issues involved there.
Yes, I'm sure. Oh, there's more than one side to the story,
That's
literally.
correct. Yes, right.
So anyway, but again, she wound up, and I put very creative teacher in here, did all kinds of fun stuff, and told the children, "Oh, I'm sorry we couldn't get around to doing all those spelling words, but maybe tomorrow." Meanwhile, she's doing all these activities and stuff. And the kid goes home, and the mom says, "Well, what did you learn at school?" She says, "Well, the teacher didn't have time, but she let us do X, Y, and Z instead." So the parents are raising their eyebrows, kind of thing. So I try to take it through the whole gamut from the kid, the teacher, the parents' point of view, but I make it positive.
That's right.
You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes.
And the other one is this little girl, but this is her I think she's fourth grade. That's why they call them these chapter books, because they can read independently at about third grade. So like third to fifth or sixth, they're chapter books. And then you get to the middle grade reading books, and then you get to YA, young adult.
Yes. Hmm.
So this one is she and her classmates are going to the hospital. They're going to put on a fancy dancing show for the children at the hospital. So, of course, the whole focus there is, understanding, compassion, and so forth. But from a kid's point of view,
Right.
she gets into a tussle with a kid in a wheelchair who got in front of her and she didn't want her in front of, the typical kid stuff. So,
That's
anyway.
nice. Yeah. Now you have written many short stories and all with meaning.
Oh, yes,
Now,
everyone.
now, do you have a
Mhm.
favorite, Valerie?
Oh boy, that would be hard. What I do there is I actually write two different types of short stories. So I write those that are humorous and they have a twist at the end, the O. Henry ending, they call it. So people, the feedback is, wow, I didn't see that coming. Wow, you really got me on that one. So, and they're usually humorous. And then my other group are more poignant. I call them my two hanky
Two
stories.
hanky stories.
Two hanky stories. And either way, people can read them, and they're very, there's no blood and gore, there's no curse words, there's no
Hmm.
X rated. Mine will not be pulled from any shelves, hopefully. You never know. Um, so people read them and they enjoy them,
Yes.
but there is a deeper meaning in every story. So, for example, I remember Mama, since we're doing Mother's Day week, that's a good one to use. Um, the mother has moved in with her adult daughter and grandchildren because she has Alzheimer's. So, but the mother realizes she's not thinking right and so on. So, in the course of the story, the daughter is trying to get the mother to go to the doctor's appointment, and the mother is confused. Who's going to the doctor, and why am I going to see a doctor?
Mm.
Everything that goes with it. So, yes, people can read that and say, oh,
They
this
can
is
relate to it,
so,
or
yes, yes.
hmm.
However, the deeper meaning is we've had role reversals because now the daughter is parenting her mother. Yeah,
Hmm.
she's having to
Yeah.
take care of her and direct her and on and on. And at one point, the mother, because she comes out of it, so to speak, and she's very sympathetic toward her daughter. And so I know how hard this is for you.
So that's the twist.
Yeah, there you go, too. And she says, and the daughter says, "It's okay, Mom. We're going to go to the doctor." And she said, "But you look sad." And the daughter says, "Well, sometimes I am sad." And she starts to tear up. And the mother then flips back into her Alzheimer's and
Ooh.
says, "Well, let's go to the doctor. It's good you going to the doctor, and I'll go with you because maybe the doctor can tell you why you're so sad."
Oh.
And the daughter says, she goes, "I think the doctor will understand why you're so sad." And the daughter said, "Yes, I think he will understand." Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. That.
So it's those kind of movie, and that is the feedback that I get all the time on my short stories. A lot of them are funny. They say, "You must know my brother Bob. He's exactly like you know."
But a lot of people can relate to that though. That's what's a
Yeah,
nice connection.
yes, and all of my shorts. That's why I said it's a like current kind of social issues that we're
Hmm.
dealing with now.
That's right.
People who are unemployed, and I've got one about the loser brother who can never keep a job, and he's always got an excuse. He comes in to the wedding reception, and he's got his T-shirt on and the beer in his hand, and they're all rolling their eyes, and everyone's doing just what they're shaking their heads, saying, "Oh no, he's here." But again, people relate to that.
That's
The
right.
relative who shows up who's totally inappropriate, and how do we get rid of him when he's Millie's cousin or brother or somebody? We can't just kick him out, but we want him to leave.
That's right.
So,
Now let's talk about a good thing on a bad day.
oh yes, good. We've all had those bad days.
Oh yes.
Yes. And this woman, I don't have it in front of me, but she picks the kid and her friend up from school. And the day it's raining and things are miserable, and she's running late, and she forgot to pick the other kid up from the daycare. One thing after the other. She finally drops off the other kid's friend, and she goes to the gas station. And she goes because the car's running out of gas, because that's always what happens when you have a million things and it's raining. So she goes in, she can't pump, it won't take her credit card. And she goes in and she tells them, what's wrong? Why won't this work? And they say, well, it's declined. And she said, well, how am I going to get gas? And they said, well, lady, that's your problem. And so she stands in line, and then she comes back and she says, the young kid is the clerk. And she said, do you think you could give me some gas for free? Just a little bit, a couple of dollars. And he looks at her like she's squirrely. He
Hmm.
calls the manager over and he tells the manager, I think this woman's trying to rob us. She wants me to give her money out of our cash so she can buy. She's done it. She's supposed to put money in our cash register. So we got that. And she explains, I got the kid in the car and the baby's crying and blah, 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 sad story. And the guy offers her the phone. He said, well, all right. He said, call someone. She said, I left the phone at home. I don't have it. I can't even call anyone. So he finally says, here's my phone, lady. I'll buy your story. Use my phone. Call somebody to come and bring you $5 to get. So then she takes his phone and she's pondering and saying, phone, wait a minute, phone number. You don't use phone numbers anymore. I don't have a dial a phone number. What do? You push one, that's mom. You push seven, that's your uncle. You push two, you know what
Oh
I mean?
boy.
Yes. So, and she's on his phone, so she doesn't have her list of contacts. So she can't even do it. She says, well, I don't have anybody to call. And this guy is thinking, this woman is really,
Is
let
that
me get
yeah.
her out of it. She's not. So she gets in the car and she's so overwhelmed, and she's just in tears with her head on the steering wheel. And the one kid's crying, the other saying, Mom, I have to get home. I got to do my homework or whatever. They're all in their own world. And the poor woman is about had it. And the kid says, Mommy, why are you crying? Mommy, you never cry. Mommy's like, do mommies cry? You're not allowed.
Hmm.
And she said, listen, we need gas or we can't get home. And the kid's saying, well, then we're right here. Get the, I said, but I don't have money. And so the kid says, you need money? And she said, yes. She says, you always put the plastic thing in. She said, I know it doesn't work today. So then the kid says, well, I have money. And the mother says, money? Money? How would you have money? Why did you get money? She says, don't you remember you gave it to me this morning because you forgot to pack my lunch? And you gave me $5 so I could buy lunch at school. But when I went through the lunch, she has a long story. I went through the lunch line. The lunch lady said, no, you have a credit from last month. And she told me to take this money home and give it to my mom. She says, then why didn't you give it to me?
Oh
She said, well,
jeez.
Mom, we didn't get home yet. So it was a bad day, but there was the good thing.
Yes. Oh,
And so,
so
and
that was the
that,
build up, and then
yeah, the drop down, and then it's like, it pulls them up again. Yeah.
oh, that's awesome. Now, how about a license to practice?
Oh boy, that's an interesting one. A lot
Yes.
of my short stories, again, catchy title, people have heard that word or phrase. And I get a lot of my ideas, of course, from eavesdropping, basically, of conversations I have with others.
Yeah.
So several of my lady friends and I were at lunch, and they were talking. I don't know how we got on topics of cars, because that's usually a guy conversation, cars. But we were talking about when we first learned to drive and what jalopies we would drive, so forth. So this woman starts telling us this story that she was in high school, and the family had one car, but she was allowed to use it, but only go to school and back. So one of the boys at school, um, she was helping him without telling the parents. She'd say, you know, I was at the library or something. She'd stay later, meet this kid at the park, and she was teaching him how to drive. But
Mm.
the emails going back and forth about what time will you be at the park, and did you tell anybody, and don't tell your mom, and that kind of stuff. So her parents, the mother, comes across this on the computer, and she's thinking the worst. You know,
Mm-hmm.
she's sneaking around. She's with this boy. Who is he? And she's telling the father, and he's fit to be tied. So they want to confront her about this. And really, it's an innocent situation where she's just trying to help this kid. And although she didn't tell the parents, she didn't really think it was that bad of a thing. You know, they weren't using the car to rob a bank or
Right.
anything, or to have sex in the back seat or anything. So she figured it would be okay. She was just trying to be kind. But the parents, and that happens again in families, teenagers, you know, you always think the worst. I don't know why, but if you've raised teenagers, you can imagine
But
why.
you can imagine the reader reading that and thinking, "Oh boy, what's
Yeah,
going to
exactly.
happen?"
See, that's right,
Yes,
because we're all being nasty minded,
that's
not thinking
right.
this is an innocent
for
kid trying to help another kid.
for shame.
Yeah. Well, and the funny part towards the end, see, I'm giving away all my endings, but at the end, they meet in the lunchroom, and she's saying something about, "Did you pass your test?" And the meaning the driving test. And he's
Mm-hmm.
saying, "I did." And what about you? Did you pass your test? And of course, the reader's thinking, "Oh,
Oh,
she went
that's
for a
right.
pregnancy
That's right.
test."
Yep.
But no, it was like an algebra test or some whatever she was doing.
Now, I found this one very interesting. Future plans. It's a young man
Oh,
with a mohawk.
oh yes, that was one of my very first short stories. And again, it's about a teenager because they know so much about so many things,
Mm-hmm.
of course. And he's in that, and again, in a short story, they confine, they're in an airplane, and he's sitting down next to this older lady. And she's, you know, he's got his ears and bebopping and whatnot. And she's uh, saying to him, you know, where are you going? And wherever he was going, Ohio or someplace. And she said, well, why are you going there for? And, you know, don't you have to go to school? And he's real skittish about that question. So she suspects a
Mm-hmm.
problem. Like, is he running away? No, he wouldn't have money for an airplane. So he tells her, yeah, I'm going to see my grandparents. I'm going to visit. And she said, well, when do you usually visit them? He said, oh, usually in the summer and usually at Christmas. And she said, well, since this isn't any around those times, you know, why would you be going to see your grandparents, you know, like in April or whenever it was? And well, my mom said maybe it'd be good for me to go there just for about 2 weeks and then I'd come back. So she's
Mm-hmm.
getting very suspicious. She's sizing this kid up. So finally, it turns out he kind of reveals that he's been suspended from school and he's been suspended so many times. And in school doesn't matter. He doesn't care about school. She said, well, you know, how are you going to buy that Lamborghini if you don't get through? And he said, well, you know, I'll earn money, you know. And she said, okay, how are you going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll mow a lawn. And she said, you'll mow a lawn? She said, you know what it's like mowing lawns? And she goes on and how dreadful his father makes him on and on. He hates it. You know, it's like,
Oh, yeah.
so she's forcing him to think this decision through, basically.
To work.
Yeah. A man with a job is a good thing, I've
That's right.
always said. Yeah.
That's right.
So, and she gets to the airport, and the grandfather comes over, and she's tagging with him. She said, I want to meet your grandfather. So she shakes his hand. She said her name. And she said, and I hope I never see your son again or grandson again. And he's yelling at the kid, what did you do? What did you say to this woman? And he's, I don't know what he did, but I'm sorry, whatever. And it's just, she says, that's okay. She gives him the business card. So here's your punchline at the end. She's a judge, a juvenile justice judge. And that's why she doesn't want to ever see him
That's
again.
right. In a,
Yeah.
in a, in a good way.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But the kid is like, well, why not? I didn't do anything to her. How come she didn't want to see me? I mean,
Of all
going his
people.
own little world.
now, now this one is called Potty Talk.
Oh, yes, that's interesting. It's a good
Yes.
draw. A lot of people think, "Oh, we're gonna have,
Yeah, that's
bad
right.
words."
Yeah.
But no, no bad words in my book. Well, actually, my first novel, I deliberately, believe it or not, in Suffer the Little Children, I actually had this kid. He's 12. He attacked the media specialist. She fell, hit her head, she died. So they're thinking this kid is 12, but he's going to be charged for murder and tried as an adult. So anyway, but that one I have dirty words in because this is a miserable kid, and I want the reader not to like him, and see how he got the way he is. But anyway, back to potty talk. So potty talk is interesting because it's really about a young woman reevaluating her relationship with this man that she's about to marry. But they're both going to college and they live together, and she's working part-time at a hotel as a maintenance cleaning lady. And she's, I never want to see another toilet. And we better make enough money so we have a maid come to our house because I am not cleaning. So she overhears a conversation of these two women in the ladies' room while she's scrubbing the floor and so forth. And these two women, not older, but older than her, and they're talking about their marriage and their divorce. They're both now divorced. And the one woman had just come from the courthouse. And they're talking about the things that were important to them and the things they didn't get from this marriage and the things that they did. He wanted the air conditioning on freezing, and and he wanted this country music, and I wanted to go to the beach, and he wouldn't go to my mother's, and he didn't remember my birth, all the stuff that goes
Yes.
on with a couple. Of course, they were kind of bashing the ex-husbands. So it was a one-sided conversation, but it got her to thinking. So she went home that night, and the boyfriend is the television, of course. He's got a sports thing on. He's sitting there with a beer that's now warm because he fell asleep watching the television. And he's there with his feet up in his grungy t-shirt, and she's coming in worn out from working the job. And she sits down next to him, and she wants a beer. And she starts talking to him, and he's like falling asleep. She's saying, "You're not listening to me. I have something important I need to tell you. We need to talk about our relationship. There's important things here."
Hmm.
Meanwhile, he says, "Later, we'll talk about it later. I'm tired. I need to sleep." Yes. So that again gave her insight into this man she's about to marry. So,
Yes.
so
Okay.
again, cute story on the surface, okay, but certainly the deeper message.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Valerie, now what sparks your interest to write a short story on a certain topic?
Um, well, sometimes it's what's in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes it's a conversation overheard that I have with people. I have a short story in there called "A Tooth for a Tooth," and a friend of mine he was he when he grew up he actually is a trained violinist, concert violinist,
Mm.
but his career was as a police detective, head of detectives in a rough kind of town. So, but again, we were chatting about our childhood and what kind of made us the way we are. And he said his mother made him, when he would go to school, he always had to take the violin case with the violin. And how he was always mocked and teased and beat up, and the kids would grab the violin case and kick it around. And then he'd get home and they'd have to get new strings for the violin. It caused a lot of
Mm.
problems for him as a kid. So he talks about this one day, he and another kid who was a minority, the two of them got picked on unmercifully. And he went on and on about that. So now the story is, as an adult, of course, he's a detective. He's saying, I'm going to look up that bully we had that was so mean to us. So he looks him up, and
Mm-hmm.
he's probably in prison somewhere. He was a no gooder to be doing those things. Turns out he is an orthodontist. So he makes an appointment. Well, he didn't make an appointment. He just showed up at his office. And of course, the receptionist saying, "Well, you can't see you. Dr. So and so can't see you. You don't have an appointment." Blah, blah, blah. So he flips his badge out and says, "I'm going to see him." So he goes, and this orthodontist doesn't even remember. It's such a significant event in his life. But this man who was the bully, who's now the orthodontist, doesn't remember him. And he said, I spent almost all my childhood beating kids up. He said, "You were just one more that I beat up." He said, "I was really in a bad way." So the orthodontist begins to tell his childhood problems and stories. And anyway, it mellows out. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not that they become chums, but
Yes.
they
Mm-hmm.
understand each other. Both of them come away with a better understanding.
Yes.
And then he has to go back to the third man who was involved in this, who's now a minister. He goes back and he says, and he keeps prodding this man, you got to come to one of my sermons. You got to come to church. This detective saying, church, get out of my life. So he decides, he shows up at church that Sunday and his friend is so shocked. He said, why are you here? He says, there's a lot of people that maybe going to church would help them. After he spoke. So anyway, I call that story a tooth for a tooth
Yes.
because the guy, yeah,
Everybody does have a story to tell, don't they?
they do. They do. Absolutely.
And that's the thing too. Like any retail store, the
Hmm.
thing is customer service, and you don't know if someone coming through that door has had a bad day,
Oh,
or for whatever reason, even the employee. If
yes.
you're having a day, that doesn't mean you take it out on
Hmm.
anyone else. It's that you don't know.
Yes,
Something
exactly.
could have tragically happened in someone's life, or
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Yeah. Everybody has a story.
that's
They're
care.
not
Yep,
in isolation. We live within a family group and a neighborhood and a work environment and a financial environment and our health. I mean, there's lots of possibilities there.
absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
and
So
and
those are the issues. I
that's right.
try to touch those kinds of issues. But as I say, you can just read the story and enjoy it, or you can get the deeper meaning
That's right. Absolutely.
and identify. My short stories, people really identify either with the characters or the situation they're in
That's
because
right.
they've been there.
And the nice thing too, you have that little twist to turn it on
Mhm.
a upscale. You
Yeah,
upside of it, the nice side.
exactly. I try. Yeah.
Yes, and you do well too.
Well, thank you.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
Now for all your book covers, Valerie, what was your process in finding the images for each book?
Well, when I first started writing, I had a publisher and they designed a cover and it was good, but over time I changed it. But then in another time, this particular novel,
Mm-hmm.
I took a photograph of the front porch of my daughter's house and I said, use this. After that, because this has been years that I've been writing now, they came out with Amazon came out with Create Space,
Yes,
which was for books. And then they had the Kindle, which was for ebooks. Years later, they combined them and it's only Kindle now, but they do both book. So they have a program called Cover Creator. They have thousands of images and they're standard, but they're very professional, and you can tailor them somewhat, like the font you use or where you want your name at the top or the bottom, and so forth. Trying to think. Here's one of theirs. Now this is one of my nonfiction books. This is I have series, not a series, but a few that are mental health. So this one says Understanding Mental Illness, a guide for family and friends.
okay,
And you see they have the head like it's
yeah.
blown away. So,
Now
so we
are those images, Valerie, free to use, or do you have to pay for those?
yeah, no, they're free. You go on to publish on there is free altogether. Now I do book, and when I do workshops, I try to encourage authors. If you're going to write a book, make the book, make the ebook, make the large print book, and do an audio book. And you can do it all on Amazon, and it's all free. So
Hmm.
get it in every modality that you can.
So you get more options than I
Yeah.
remember years ago,
Oh yeah.
before even self-publishing was even
Oh yeah, yeah, it was no.
totally
And then it
different.
was looked down on. It was vanity publishing. Who do you think you are? Kind of
Yes,
thing.
right.
But to get to any big, the competition is stiffer. Not so much, I don't think, based on the writing or the content or your skills, but when a public figure writes a book, it's all over for you. So if you can play football, or if you're a politician or a movie star or something like that, where your name and the publishing companies want that because this person already has a following,
That's
and
correct.
that's what's going to make money for them. And they don't, and they have editors and fact finders that will. make the writing go smoothly, even if the person
Absolutely.
can't.
Yes.
So whereas people such as myself, no, I have to write it, I have to edit it, I have to format it, I have to proof it, and then I have to go back and say, oh, I let that one slip by and redo it. Yeah,
That's why you wear many hats.
this is true. This is true.
now,
And those
now,
are just my writing
I
hats.
know it. I know it. Now,
Mhm.
Valerie, you are not just an author. You are also the director of Authors for Authors.
I am.
Now, can you explain to our viewers what Authors for Authors is and how it's a great way to grow and network with other authors?
Well, originally, this is about 16, 17 years ago. um, they didn't have, there used to be a writers group that had a conference every year, and then they dropped. It got too expensive, too complicated. So we were several years where I live, where they didn't have that big event for authors. So several of us got together and we created it. And this was year 16. So, but our purpose is to give writers, particularly Florida writers, especially,
Hmm.
we others can be there, but Florida is what we're looking at. An opportunity to market their books, to sell their books, to meet their reading public. We have in November we have two big events a year,
Yes,
and so in November we have the Meet the Author Book Fair,
that's
and
right.
that is to meet your reading public and to display your books and to meet other authors too. So, and in April each year, we have our writing conference. So that's on a more professional level, in that you're not there necessarily to sell books. You're there to learn about editing, formatting, writing, um, grammar, building your three-dimensional characters. And matter of fact, we had an interesting this time. It said how to write about trauma without the drama.
Yes,
So that was one of the ones a speaker this year did. But we have that, and or how to plot and plan your novels. And some of them it's how to write an outline and or how to write a letter to your agent. So it's those kind of nitty gritty,
yes.
kind of skills that writers need and they need to know about.
And plus, too, it's a great way to network
Oh,
and
absolutely,
learn from other
absolutely.
authors, too.
And we have those two big events, but we have other things. uh, I'm contacted like by libraries or associations or groups or whatever, or sometimes it's a charity and they're having some big event and they're looking for donations for the gift baskets or
Yes.
something. I said I just happen to have about 3,000 books. Let me. So I get there, and then I send the author and I say, hey, you remember that book you displayed 3 years ago? Well, I was just donated to such and such charity, their event. So I do that. Yeah.
Now, what are some of your marketing tips you can share with authors,
Oh
who
boy.
struggle with this? What's some of your?
Okay. Well, there's really three. Let me just write this down so I don't forget it. Here, there's three types or three ways of marketing. And one is direct, which is one on one, talking to that other person. Um, Another one is what they call hard copy.
Hmm.
And then the other one is social media or online. Okay, so direct would be seeing or talking to your relatives, your neighbors, anybody you can at workshops,
That's right.
events, and so forth, because now it's me and my book. And you don't have to shove it on people. If they're yawning and their eyes are rolling, okay, maybe you better stop that conversation and move on. But there are other things, or if you're in a homeowners group, or, there's so many things we participate in, and you can just walk around with a book in your hand. Oprah talks about that with the color purple. She said, I never went anywhere without that book. And you can imagine how many people she knows.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, here, to the ladies especially, I said, you go grocery. How often do you go shopping? Oh, every week. Great. Take one of your books, and while you're pushing your grocery cart, that little baby seat in the front, if you don't have a baby in it, you put your book in it. And even if no one talks to you, they'll see it and
That's
they'll
right.
think, oh, I tell them it's like that Geico thing. Who has Geico insurance? I don't know, three people, but the other millions of them know that Geico thing. Okay, so all this marketing techniques of visual, just seeing it, even if no one's talking about it. However, I have had people stop and say, wow, that looks like that's a nice cover. How is that book? And I say, it's great. I can hardly put it down because I don't tell them it's me. Although if I'm out in my cute little red shirt that says Authors for Authors on it, which there's no group, there's nothing to join, there's no dues or anything. They just need to go on Facebook authors group, Authors for Authors, or they can go to authorsforauthors.com and see what's going on. But yeah, when I have my Authors for Authors shirt on, people will ask me about, are you an author? Do you write? And that kind of thing.
That's
Or
right.
even when you go into the checkout line, I tell them, here's very simple. The person at the cash register is always going to say, how are you today? And I tell them, oh, I have this terrible headache. I've been writing this chapter in my book. It's chapter 13, and I'm just having a devil of a time with it. Well, here we start. You write books? What? What's an? And it starts a whole conversation
That's right.
with the cashier, with the kid bagging the groceries, with the lady who's standing back of you. So
Yeah,
these are very simple, easy ways to have conversations, let alone going to events, which you should as an
that,
author
absolutely.
association. Yeah.
That's the thing too. I mean, the sky's the limit on
But you
promote.
got to have it in your head.
That's right.
Marketing, marketing, marketing.
That's correct. The same thing with business cards. I've said to other authors too. I take those things everywhere and I post them wherever I can.
Yes,
It could even just
absolutely.
be to the doctor. It could be to the bank, to the grocery store.
Well, and one of our authors at our last event said he uses them every time he goes in a restaurant when he pays the bill.
That's
He
right.
puts it right there, right with the bill,
That's
when
right.
he pays it.
Yeah,
So there's so many ways you can do this. But business cards are good. However, I have seen the purpose there is to have this is what comes in as a hard copy. So business cards are to leave a way for the person to contact you. And people don't always put their contact information on the business card. They put the name of a book because and I tell them you should have your name and you should have your email
that's
and
right.
a web page. Now, if you publish through Amazon, they give you a free web page, which is excellent and easy to use. You should always have it. And I use that as kind of a search engine when I get contacted by somebody says, "Oh, I wrote a book and this and that." I go to Amazon to see,
That's right.
do they have a page yet, and so forth. But the business card should have basic contact information, and on the back of it is where you can put the titles of your book. Or if you only have one, put the title in the blurb. But do not put your address.
That's
Don't
right.
put your phone number. you know. But some don't even have their name. We had an author several years he came, even his book, yes, excuse me, he has a title, but he doesn't have his name on as the author.
That's it's like how do you even then how does that person even you know you know
Not going to be found.
yeah, no, no, but
No.
that's valuable information what you just said, Valerie, because it's simple but they overlook it.
Yes, because they know who they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
you know
but hard copy of flyers you could give out. It's certainly your books. And
Absolutely.
there's lots of ways of doing it. I encourage people when there's a charity event, ask them if they need a donation for a door prize or something.
That's
And you
right.
get a lot of mileage out just that because people see it displayed at the luncheon or wherever they're going. Finally, the person wins and they get up and walk across the room with the book they just won. And then when they sit back at their table, everyone they say, "Oh, let me see that book."
That's correct.
Then when they get home, whoever they live with, they'll say, "Guess what? I won the door prize. Look at this." And it shows them. Next Monday, they go to work and they say, "What'd you do over the weekend?" "Oh, I went to this lunch and guess what? I won the door prize. It was a book by Valerie Allen."
That's it. That's it.
So out of that one donation, people don't, that's another thing with marketing. They don't realize it's money well spent. I mean, that really didn't cost you anything except cost of your book.
That's right.
But look at all the mileage you got out of that.
Absolutely. That's all
Yeah,
it takes.
yeah, yeah. And the third way of marketing is the online. Now, some people like me who didn't grow up with computers or anything Never even saw a computer till I was in my graduate studies. But anyway, um, whether you like it or you don't like it, it's the way of the world. And you need to learn how to use You need to have an email, certainly. And you should have a web page, and you can get some of those for free, well, through Amazon, but there's other places you can, and they're a template, so they're pretty easy to use. And then choose one, maybe two online social media. I always use Facebook because that's where we have Authors for Authors, and we have thousands. I mean, I have thousands. When I first started with Facebook, it was just me, Valerie Allen. Well, I hit 5,000 people, and unbeknownst to me, as a person, as an individual, they won't let you have more than 5,000. So I got an email from the gods at Facebook saying, you're very popular. You have 5,000 people. You must now open a fan page. So I had to open Valerie Allen Writer. Well, same thing happens. I had to get a Valerie Allen publisher. And then I went to Authors for Authors, and that's how most people contact me. And
and
we have thousands on there, and most of them are, I mean, they're all over the United States, but most of them are Florida. It's amazing how many writers we have in Florida.
oh, absolutely. Oh, yes. You know that's the thing. Speaking of, because you were with Marshall Frank, in which I
Yeah.
miss. I miss.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah,
Sad.
he
Yeah. Right.
because we every time I would see him, we would talk about his book that he wrote about his parents, in
Oh,
vaudeville, and
mm-hmm. Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
people that they met. I'm
Yes.
thinking,
He had a book called Loving Vivian, and that was his mom, and she was a dancer, and she had the dance school. She's the one that made him take the violin to school, but he loved her anyway. But
yeah, we had some
yeah,
great conversations too, and I miss him.
yeah, likewise, yeah,
Um, now, Valerie, you do have a website though, and that's through.
I do. Mine is through GoDaddy, but it's Valerie Allen Writer, yeah, .com.
Okay, and
And
that's
then I
where.
have the one through authors,
Yeah,
Amazon.com/. Now you got to use lowercase. A lot of people don't get that. They have to use lowercase letters, then put the word author slash, and then Valerie Allen or whoever they're looking for. But
yes,
that part has to be in lowercase, otherwise you don't get through.
and that's for where readers can learn more about you and purchase
Oh
your
yeah,
books too.
yeah, they'll see the books and yes, yeah. But current stuff, because a web page is good, but it's fixed, so to speak.
Yes,
Whereas the social media, you can go on there and I could tell them I'm going to be at the author's table
that's
or,
right.
yes, or if I'm going to speak somewhere or make a presentation or conference is coming up and it's up to date and people make good contributions, which I also do because I monitor that every day. So if you're going to have when you have social media, you do have to monitor it because I've never gotten anything threatening or X-rated or salacious on there. But I do get people that in their joy over their grandson graduating from kindergarten, or that they found their cat, or they got a new car, or those things, which are all good things. But does that have anything to do with, writing, editing, publishing? That is the focus of our Facebook group, Authors for Authors.
Yes. Now, when is your next event, Valerie?
It should be in November. It's always the weekend before Thanksgiving,
And
and
we're keeping our
we don't
fingers crossed
schedule
on
them.
that.
Yes, yes, yeah, because the Parks and Recreation has made some changes, so
Yes.
um, I'm in touch with those folks. But we've had it there for 16 years, so we'll see.
Yes, we're gonna, yeah,
Mhm.
because that I think is one of the, I think one of the bigger events that that we have.
Yeah, it draws a lot of people, and that one I'm limited on space as far as the vendor tables because the room is only a certain size,
Right.
so I always wind up with a waiting list for that one. Yeah.
Right.
Whereas the writers' conference, which we have at the Hilton, the Hilton's pretty big, so we can have as many people as want to register.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now, Valerie, what books are you currently pursuing?
Well, I haven't pursued a book in a while. I have one in the hopper called my called I think it's My Brother's Keeper, and I haven't worked on it in a while. But I always have those sort of biblical titles, even though it's not faith writing. Um, so and sometimes I have to do that. I write. I kind of get it together almost, and then I have to leave it. It could be a year or two, and I come back and I think, well, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
Let me finish
Yes.
this thing up. But the short stories, I haven't written those now in a while either, but I have so many. I probably have nearly 100 of them out there. So every Friday, for the people who are on my Facebook, I put your weekend short story read, and how the link so they can get to it. So, and there's places, storystar.com is another place you can post short stories. They're more difficult. They tell me more difficult to market than a novel. But for those people who want short stories, that's what they want.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, Valerie, this has been a great honor to have you on
Well,
the
thank
program
you.
today.
Thank you. Well,
And
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
and I always look forward to seeing you in November, and
Yep.
because it's such a wonderful event, and it's a great way to, just network with everybody, meet new authors.
Yes. And encourage them.
Absolutely,
They
absolutely.
have their one little book and their hands are shaking. You
Yes,
want to say, take it easy, it'll work, keep at it. Yeah. And
yes,
it does get easier, the more you do it, the easier it gets.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think too, it's you know with you at the helm of the authors for authors, and it is a wonderful treat though, because you know a lot of the authors too, we need to thank you,
Oh, well, I
because
take
you are
any
you.
appreciation I can get.
Well, it's when you started this, and then
Mhm,
because you figure too, I my wife and I met you like 5 years ago,
mhm.
roughly. It's
Yeah,
been a few years ago, and we love going to it,
yeah, good.
and it's just the fact that we do get a lot of foot traffic there,
Mhm. Yeah,
and especially all the very talented authors from
yeah.
all levels.
Yeah. And they're very
Yeah.
welcoming. I
Oh,
actually remember the first time when you and your wife came in, and one of the comments actually your wife said to me, she says, everyone here seems to know each other, and this is the first time we've been here. I said, don't worry, come a few more times, you'll be one of the crew.
that's right. Yeah,
Everyone will know you. They say, oh, Brad, yeah, I remember him, the guy you had a like a bowler hat with a flower or
that's
something.
correct. Yes. Yep.
And I said, oh, they'll definitely remember him.
Yeah,
So come
I
back.
remember that because I was actually the the man with the red bowler hat with the
Yes.
flower. I remember that. Yeah, because that was basically like my trademark.
Yes, yes.
Because at that time I had the two comedian quiz books.
Mhm,
At that
exactly.
time, yeah, that was
Yeah,
awesome though. We had so much fun, and we always do. And we're
good.
keeping our fingers crossed for November because it is a
Yeah,
wonderful event.
yep. Well,
Yeah,
we're ready and willing. We'll see what Parks and Recreation's doing about
yeah,
their facilities.
that's right.
Yeah,
But again, Valerie, I thank you so much, and it's been a great honor to have you on the program.
well, thank you. Thank you so much.
And also, you have a wonderful and lovely Mother's Day tomorrow.
I will. All right. Thank you so
Thank
much,
thank you.
Brad.
You have a great day, Valerie.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.